The Authors Forum exists to inspire success. We will talk with authors and others in the publishing industry to bring you essentials and advice. Dr. Veronica Asagui is your host for Authors Forum.
When you write a fiction story like All She Ever Wanted, did you have the story already set up in your mind, or did you have it? Did it grow as you were writing it?
Well,
I'm always curious about that. You know.
Yeah, Victoria popped up in my head one day, and actually, what happened was the line that did not survive the book popped into my head, which was. Elegance exuded from Victoria as she stepped into the room. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what this meant, but it was in my head for about 3 days, and I finally had to write it down. And like I said, it did not survive my final edit of the book. But that's where Victoria began, and she kept telling me her story day after day after day, and I would write down what she was telling me, this little voice in my head that just really wouldn't leave me alone. And when I tried to force the story to go someplace that Victoria didn't want it to go, she basically pulled me back and said, no, this is my story. You're telling my story, not your story. And that's, and I found when I let that happen, I made much better progress, and I ended up with a book that really told the story that needed to be told.
That's awesome, because you figure, so these characters literally come to life. Right, as you're writing them,
yes.
And you can see what they look like, of course, you know, because
Right.
what they're wearing every morning, and
Yes.
in the evening, how they go to, or when they go to sleep, and when they're telling you what to write, you know, that's so that's fiction.
Yes.
But it's reality when you come to think about it. Reality to the author, and when you write fiction so well, it becomes, becomes real. It's
yes.
just, I really enjoyed reading that. Have you ever written nonfiction?
I write very little nonfiction. I have an essay in this book, Be the Star You Are for Teens, that is...
Be the Star You Are for Teens. Mm-hmm.
And the essay is called The Gift of You, and that's nonfiction. And of course I write the poetry, and I do the occasional article or essay.
So how would you feel more comfortable writing fiction than nonfiction?
Absolutely. Yes.
And what is that makes the difference from one to the other?
I think in fiction you can explore things that you can't so much in essay form or in nonfiction form, because you can take it to the realm of what is not real. You can take it to the realm of what if. Mm-hmm. You can explore the different possibilities instead of the actual outcome. And a lot of times, most of the time in nonfiction, you can't do that.
So you can always write, they lived happily ever after, where with nonfiction, you have to say, oops, sorry, right?
Yeah, it wasn't happily ever after all,
no.
yes.
In All She Ever Wanted, Victoria reads journals written by some of her ancestors and listens to stories told by Mama and Papa York, and has discussions with various people about race relations and at different points in history. So do you think racial relations are better now than they were? I know it's a powerful question, but here goes.
It is a powerful question, and I think that things are better. I don't think that they're perfect. I think we're a long way from perfect. I think things get better all the time, and they get better when people discuss the issue, when people embrace the way they really feel and get it out in the open and talk about it. And I'm not saying that people should be cruel or heartless in any way, but I think when we try to hide the way we feel, and when we try to hide the differences and the similarities that we have, we end up creating more problems than when we're just honest and say to someone, hey, I don't understand why this is different from the way I do things. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's an evolving process. I don't know that it will ever truly be perfect. I also believe that people tend to want to have someone to hate, and I find that very sad. Whether it's someone of another color or someone of another religion or someone of another political viewpoint, people have a hard time embracing one another and accepting those differences as being important to all of our lives. And I think that is something that we also need to work on.
That is so true, and I mean, I think back about not even 15 years ago, a friend of mine, she was 16 years old, and her family and her, they moved to South Carolina. And I got a letter from her saying that she was talking to another boy in the classroom one day, and the teacher came up to her and said, "Here, you don't talk to black boys. A white girl does not talk to a black boy unless you want to get into trouble." And she was like, she couldn't believe this is what a teacher telling her that. And this was like 15 years ago. And so that's why when I read the book, I'm like, I was totally in my heart with the characters. And I think a lot of people can talk about the difference, like you said, religion, just being different becomes a very negative attitude that people put out when somebody's different from themselves. They're not open. And this book teaches you how to open someone's heart and to accept and see how people are made, and not to put a mark on everybody, you know, this is that and this is that and so on, you know. So I found, I know you're probably going to laugh, but I found your style a little bit like Hemingway. And that's what I read when I was a kid. I used to read the Hemingway books in Europe because he was the big writer in the United States. And so did you have someone that kind of inspired you in your style of writing, or how did you come about to write the way you write?
Well, it's interesting that it reminds you of Hemingway, mainly because I never read Hemingway until after I wrote this book. So I don't think that I got any inspiration from Hemingway.
Okay.
On the other hand, I think that every writer that one reads has some type of influence in writing style, whether it's showing you how to put together a scene, or showing you words that you don't want to use, or phrases that are cliched. So whenever I read anything, fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter, I always try to look for how this can help me with my own writing career and my own writing style. So that's, so I think that there are probably influences. I find that there are a lot of writers who I admire, and that has lent, I don't know how much that has lent to my actual writing, though.
I think from one author to another, I think that sometimes we have a universal intelligence we all possess, and sometimes we think that we have created something unique, and somehow someone else across the world in another country has the same idea. It's the way it goes on with discoveries, I guess, right? And so I think that's what happens, because I also had a review on the web about my first book, the Scoliosis Self-Help Resource book. I actually read it yesterday, where someone said all the pictures in there are yoga poses. And I'm like, yoga poses? When I created them, they were not yoga poses, but to this person they were yoga poses. So somehow they were classifying it as yoga poses, which, okay, they are yoga poses, but that's what came to me as being, and I named them completely something different. So, so I understand how you mean that you discovered or you created your own style, even though to me, oh, it's Hemingway, but it's not, it's TL. Okay.
Absolutely.
It's TL.
Well, and also, you know, along that same vein, you have the influences that come in kind of naturally. And I think that if someone, you know, particularly tries to write in the style of another writer, they're doing the other writer themselves and their readers a disservice.
Right, right. One of the things I also find that I absolutely loved about the book was the smooth way that at each chapter you went from present to the past. But you did it so smoothly that you could almost like, you know, like you travel in space. You know, you went back to the past, and I love that way. Did you mean to do it that way on purpose?
Yes.
Because that was awesome.
I worked on the structure of that because I wanted it to have a fluidness to it, a fluidity to it that would just let the reader know that, yeah, we're still in the present, but this is her memory. This is what brought her to where she's at today, and to relate to that, because I think we all do that. We all sit at some point in our lives, and I've recently been doing it myself, and we think about something in our past that maybe something we've done that hurt someone else, or maybe something that someone else did that hurt us, and we think about, okay, and how does that affect where I'm at today? And sometimes we find that that was a large part of our growth, or we find that we need to do something to fix what we did. And I think that we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to work on that all the time.
Well, you're doing a marvelous job, not only with your fiction book, but also with your poetry. It really connects, and I'm learning a lot about you as a writer. It is awesome that we can meet in person and we talk to each other the way we are doing.